Welcome, everybody, to a very late Tuesday night edition. And it is the season debut for the one and only CJ Woodling. Everyone, in your own virtual world, give CJ Woodling a round of applause. Managing editor now. Officially official. Managing editor of Anaheim Calling. He is filling in for Felix tonight. Felix is a little bit busy doing some studying. And the reason why this is so late, actually, is we had a little Anaheim Calling Beer League game tonight. And we decided, listening to this, you probably know the Ducks lost 6-1 to the Predators. We wanted to really follow up what the Ducks did. Really follow up and kind of make everyone out there proud. And we lost 7-1. It was a good one. It was a fun one. How do you feel? How do you feel right now?
Not great, but you know what? Sometimes it does feel good to sync up with the Ducks on play. You know, to be completely honest, I think we mimicked their play in a lot of ways. So you could say Team Anaheim Calling is basically an NHL team.
Oh, yeah. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
7-1. Do rule 26. I'm going to blame the people that weren't there. Cough, cough, Felix. Cough, cough.
It's always Felix's fault.
100%. No, we didn't play great. And also credit to the team we played. I think there's a couple people that listen to the show on that team. Trash Pandas. Was that the team name, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
So they played well. We didn't. It happens.
Yeah, they did.
So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about this Ducks game. So jumping into this game, we're just going to kind of do a quick recap here. First period's going. The Nashville Predators get a couple different power plays in the first period, and the Ducks do a good job of killing off the very first one that Hampus Lindholm took for cross-checking against Victor Arvidsson. But later on in the first period, 9 minutes in, Jacob Larsson took an interference penalty, and then at basically the 1 minute mark left of the power play, Jacob Silfverberg is called for cross-checking, and this was not a very good call. And I am not one to really criticize the officials, but when you're up on a power play, you got to actually do something kind of egregious to get a 5-on-3 power play against. So just want to make mention, not the best call in the world right there, to put the Ducks down 5-on-3. But for anyone out there that is saying that this decided the game or assist to the ref, the Ducks still could have gone out there and killed it off. Obviously, as you're listening to this, you know that the Ducks did not. Roman Josi is able to control the puck at the point, fires it through a screen, ends up finding the back of the net. And this kind of woke up the Ducks a little bit. They were able to generate a fair amount of chances and shots after that, and they were actually kind of generating a fair amount of play up until that. And then the Ducks were rewarded actually for moving their legs a little bit after that with a power play it was actually Colton Sissons that took the penalty for slashing on Andre Kasha. And basically near the end of the power play, Adam Henrique tries to move the puck to the point. Colton Sissons jumps out of the box and is able to pounce on the puck, go in kind of on a half breakaway, ends up beating John Gibson. Gibson's a little bit off his angle. I mean, what did you think of Gibson's game in that first period?
Definitely wasn't his best. This is a perfect example of the kind of game that we get when John Gibson isn't superhuman, especially with this Ducks defense. Now, to be fair, and I think we'll go over this, the Ducks did play better than maybe the score indicated, but it still wasn't great, and they still gave up plenty of grade A scoring chances. So when Gibson isn't superhuman like he was tonight, these are the types of games that are going to happen a little more frequently.
Yep, and we'll get into that a little bit, in a little bit. Really quickly, I want to backtrack because I realized forgot to mention this. This is usually Felix's job, as all of you know out there, so winging it right now. Going into the game, it was announced that Max Comtois was out of the lineup, as was Max Jones, with Devon Shore coming into the lineup and Nick Ritchie staying in the lineup, along with the real surprise to me was the fact that Nicolas Deslauriers stayed in the lineup. What did you think of the lineup construction? Because I have some thoughts, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
I like Shore getting ice time. I think he's had a good start to
Mm-hmm.
the season, and I think him getting scratch these games, kind of sucks, but at the same time, I do get it because of the logjam of wings. That being said, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, where either Comtois or Jones probably needs to be sent down to the goals to get regular playing time. These guys should not be getting scratched. If you are going to play Delorier, and I think many people know our opinions on Delorier. If you are indeed going to give him ice time, then send one of the kids down. I could understand him. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understood the thinking of him being in against Calgary with Milan Lucic on the ice. The Ducks feel like, hey, they needed a little bit more muscle, somebody who could get in there like Delorier. For this game, yeah, Nashville, there's a bit of a rivalry there, and the Ducks don't like them, and games can get a little bit nasty. But Nashville has so much skill and speed, and they don't really have a Milan Lucic type guy. So Delorier being left in the lineup was pretty puzzling to me.
Yeah, and it's one of the first puzzling moves I think that from Dallas Eakins so far this season. I mean, there's maybe been a few other ones, but this is the first one where I kind of look at it and go, huh, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense at all. Simply because Nick Ritchie had a good game against the Flames, so it makes sense that you want to keep him in. It makes sense for one of the Maxes to not be in the lineup and have Devin Shore come in. But to have Delorier in over one of Jones or Comtois just doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Shore fit in well with both Grant and Rowney. And so why not put in Shore in that spot and then have, I mean, near the end of the end of the game against the Flames, I thought Comtois looked pretty good with Terry and Steele. And Max Jones had shown some chemistry there. So I don't know if maybe it was the fact that Eakins wanted someone with a bit more experience to be playing with those two and not have a full-on kid line. But at this point, I don't really know if there's a full justification for having... I get having Delorier in the lineup over one of Jones or Comtois. You can maybe make the justification. I don't agree with it, but I can understand the justification. But to have him in the lineup over both of them just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So it felt like the Ducks were a little bit behind the eight ball, but I mean, maybe it didn't affect them too much when we start getting some of the numbers after we get through the full recap here. So getting now into the second period, so the Ducks went into this the break down. They were down 2-0 going into that break, the first intermission. So starting out the second period, the Predators scored right away, and it's one of those where I don't really know if there's a whole lot anyone can do there. It's just sometimes I think you just got to tip your cap to the other team. And I think that this is one of those. Nick Bonino got the puck at the point, kind of just did a quick turnaround shot, and Grimaldi just kind of reaches out with one hand and is able to poke the puck basically kind of around Gibson. And it's a really nice tip, a really good play. I don't really know if they could pull off that play again. But it's just one of those kind of, there's not a whole lot you can do. It's just like, it is what it is. I don't know if you disagree with that, if you think that maybe someone could have been tighter on Grimaldi, but it's not as if Grimaldi was in a good spot. It just, he kind of reached with one hand and got a stick on it.
No, I agree with you. There was no actual play there developing. Like you said, Bonino just kind of flung it at the point. Grimaldi was in the right place at the right time. That goal had a lot more to do with just fortunate circumstances kind of playing out for Grimaldi and the Predators. Manson, I believe, was the one who was in front of Gibson, and I thought he was positioned just fine, given the fact that there really was no developing play. That's just one of those plays that happens occasionally in hockey. So I don't really feel like you can blame any particular person for that.
Yeah, and so as we move on in the period, Troy Terry gets a breakaway, and Yannick Weber hooks him down, ends up getting a penalty shot for it. And Terry comes in on the penalty shot, tries to go 5-hole on Rene, and Rene just kind of gets down quick. Not the best penalty shot from Terry. You'd like to see him finish. I mean, that's the one that you look at and maybe say, what if he finishes that? Because up until that point in time, the Ducks had played a pretty good game, and it's just the bounces hadn't gone their way. I mean, I don't know if the bounces going their way is the best way to put it. Maybe the better way to put it is that the Predators got chances and finished them, and finished almost every chance that they had, whereas the Ducks weren't able to capitalize on those, even though they were getting more of those. And so as we move on through the second period, this is just going to be kind of a short recap for everyone out there, just so you know. Matthias Ekholm is able to get in on a breakaway, ends up beating John Gibson, just like I said, every single chance, because it felt like this goal came against the run of play, where the Ducks really had a lot of contained pressure, a lot of sustained pressure, and Matthias Ekholm was able to get in, ends up beating John Gibson. We start with the third period. John Gibson is not in net. Ryan Miller is instead. This was a very smart move, in my opinion, with the score being 4-0 at that point in time. Give John Gibson a rest. This is a game that most likely they're not going to win. Pretty much the Ducks were looking to have a little bit of a load management situation. Don't add minutes to Gibson when it's not necessary. So I'm all for that. I know you probably are also, unless you disagree.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay.
And I think it's important to point out that Gibson wasn't playing his best, but this was way more of, as you said, a load management pull, given his history and his workload in the past. By that point, it was pretty clear that the Ducks weren't going to be coming back. So this was way more, like you said, a load management issue than it was for any sort of performance pull.
Yep. And so in the third period, Ryan Getzlaf gets a chance. Center of ice ends up burying it to stop the shutout. It's a 4-1 lead now for the Predators. The Ducks kind of were able to build off that, get some pressure, but then Victor Arvidsson is able to pounce on a turnover from Josh Manson. Just a really kind of poor play. Arvidsson gets it right in front of the net, finishes it for his fourth goal in the season, making it 5-1. And then later on, the Predators get a glorious chance. Miller makes the first stop, but that ends up behind him. Arvidsson's able to put it in. And so that's all she wrote. It ended up at 6-1. A game that, from the scoreline perspective, not great. Not great at all. But having said that, now that we've kind of
Jake, actual goals don't matter. It's all about expected goals.
Yes, exactly. So
that's what wins games, right?
Okay, let's jump into this. So first off, I actually do want to have this. Let's go for a little positivity before we say the negativity, and then we'll get some more positivity. What are your thoughts so far on the season, seeing as this is your first show?
I've been very pleasantly surprised. I kind of came into this season with, I would say the best word is cautious optimism. New coach, a lot of people who kind of know me and who have been following me for a while knew I was a fan of the Dallas Eakins hiring. And but I don't even think that I could have expected the results. So I take that back. The results, I think, are slightly better than expected, but those aren't too surprising. I think what I'm more surprised at is just how well the Ducks have responded to this system change. You can see they're playing a way more modern game. There's still definitely things to improve on. There's still sloppiness. There's things, but those things can get corrected over time. This good start for the Ducks is night and day different from the good start they had under Carlisle. They're just a completely different team. Part of that due to personnel, part of that due to coaching. But I just think I'm surprised and really, really impressed with the process that the Ducks are putting together right now.
Yeah, 100% agreed. So let's a little bit of negativity here, because in reality, the Ducks lost 6-1. That's
and
not good.
We need to be on brand.
John Gibson did not have a good game. I don't think that's a hot take either.
Nope.
The other negative that you can have is that the Ducks weren't able to finish their chances, and the Predators did. I think you can also flip that to a very positive angle, as the Ducks got a lot of chances in this game. So let's dive into some numbers real quick for everyone out there. So in terms of shot attempts, the Ducks ended up having 44 shot attempts for, or Corsi for, 30 against. They ended up expected goals, and this is all at 5-on-5. They ended up at 1.294 and 1.8 against, so that against total kind of really bumps it up. But the one thing I will add is that does, at 5-on-5, that doesn't include the penalty shot. So when you go to all situations, a factor in the power plays, which also I want to add this in, the Ducks got a fair amount of power plays in this game, and it kind of evened itself up until the end of that game. By the way, Nick Ritchie, we're going to talk about him a little bit coming up in terms of good and bad, but that penalty was bad.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. But so if you go to all situations, 2.32 expected goals for, 2.42 expected goals against. So pretty even on that end. And really it's really kind of the third period that added that total for the Nashville Predators. So when it was kind of garbage time and the Predators were getting their goals, the Ducks were kind of really just not having a good structure in the D zone, and that's when a lot of those chances came for the Predators. So it's kind of interesting. If you eliminate the third period, the Ducks really kind of dominated this game from both a chance perspective and a shot attempt perspective. So it really is a game that you just can kind of look at, especially those first two periods. The third period's just, I think, a wash overall because of how the game went. But you look at those first two periods, and I think the process was good. The Ducks had chances. They were generating. I mean, Nick Ritchie had a bunch of golden opportunities. I mean, you look at
so many.
You look at his individual totals on the night, just simply at 5-on-5. He had .24 expected goals at 5-on-5, which is a pretty fair amount. He had a .3 in all situations. He had 8 shot attempts, 4 scoring chances, 2 high danger chances. So he had a lot. I mean, Andre Kasha also did that. Getzlaf, Kasha, Ritchie line really showed promise tonight. I mean, who knows if we see that line again, if Ritchie's still in the lineup, but they had a lot of chances. I mean, Silfverberg had a ton of glorious opportunities. Terry had the penalty shot. And so it's not as if they're not generating chances. And I think that the concern that you have in that situation is, well, are the Ducks not finishers? And Felix and I have talked about this a little bit. And I think that it's slightly concerning, but it's still too early because these types of things with shooting percentage, we talk about it in the positive way a lot, where, well, not in the positive way, it's kind of negative if you think about it, but for instance, when we looked at Pontus Aberg last year, to bring up a name a lot of Ducks fans are very fond of, that this is a guy that was able to score everything, and he had, 10 to 14 goals, something like that, for the Ducks last year, but if you looked at his shooting percentage, you knew that wasn't going to be sustainable, that was eventually going to come back down to earth because he just wasn't generating the chances and getting the shots that typically would result in that amount of goal total. You look at the Ducks tonight, you look at the totals that Terry put up, the totals that Ritchie put up in terms of the chance and just quantity. So the quality and quantity for both of them. Same thing with Silfverberg. I mean, Silfverberg had 7 individual shot attempts, 4 individual scoring chances, 1 individual high danger chance. Those are going to find the back of the net. That's just bound to happen. And I think that this is a game that you, big picture wise, you look at it and you just kind of say, it is what it is. There are going to be games where the other team's just able to capitalize on it. Where I get frustrated is when these types of games happen and the Ducks aren't generating any chances. They're stuck in their own zone the whole time. They're getting dominated both on the scoreboard and on the basically from the shot metric perspective. In this game, you can find the positive. You can see that they were playing a good game, and it's just the puck wasn't going in for them, and the puck was going in for the Predators. And I know that might be an oversimplification, but I don't really know if there's a whole lot more to this game than that.
Look, the bottom line here is that if the Ducks play this type of game, then probably 7 to 8 times out of 10, they're going to win that game. Especially at 5-on-5. Now, again, the penalties and things like that are still a little bit concerning. I know Eakins has talked about, especially earlier in the season, wanting to cut out the needless penalties. And it seems like there is a little bit of kind of the organizational hangover from the Carlisle days on that. But at 5-on-5, this team has been great. They were pretty good overall tonight, other than in the expected, goals for category. But even then, they weren't terrible. And if you look at the Ducks on the season right now, in all situations, they're shooting 8.39%. League average is usually between 9.5% and 10% roughly on a given year. And it may be a little bit higher than that right now with goal scoring that's elevated up across the league over the past couple seasons. So the Ducks aren't really necessarily, they have one of the lower shooting percentages in the league. I think it's in the bottom half. And at some point, those pucks will start to go in as long as they're generating the chances. Now, I don't know if they really do have true finishers. Maybe Raquel could be a finisher. I think he has proven to be a finisher. Maybe Kasha could be more of a finisher. We have seen spurts of that. But outside of them, there's not a ton. So are they necessarily going to score at like Tampa Bay levels or Vegas levels? Maybe not. But the offense should increase if they keep playing like this.
Do you have overall shooting percentages up for individual players right now?
I can bring it up right now.
Because I'm curious what Jakob Silfverberg's shooting percentage is. Because, I mean, the chances he got tonight, I would guess that Silfverberg probably this season will end at the probably 11 to 12% range is what I'd probably expect for him. And so with the chances, he's a good shooter. We all know that. With the chances he got tonight, he was continually getting into good spots and just couldn't finish. And I think part of it is as much as it's frustrating, same thing with the third Predators goal. Sometimes you just got to tip your cap to the other team's goalie and say he was good tonight and he stopped us. I don't know if there's any other way to put it. By the way, Kempafu, the Silfverberg lover, said 26.3%. So maybe this was a little bit of a course correction for Silfverberg and a regression in the sense of he's shooting at 26%. He's getting these chances. Maybe it's a little bit of a regression to the mean on that with him coming down, whereas he was scoring at kind of an unsustainable rate, and so maybe it's now getting saved as compared to going in the back of the net.
I've got 22.73, but that's all strengths. The 26 might be on 5-on-5, which is probably is. That being said, Silfverberg is number 2 in the team in individual expected goals according to Natural Stat Trick. He is second on the team in individual shot attempts, Corsi 4, and also like third on the team right now in individual scoring chances. So even though he's got an elevated shooting percentage that should even out a little bit, his goal scoring isn't going to completely dry up. He's generating chances. He's getting good looks. He's going to continue to score.
Yep. And we will get into some of the more standout players in this game after the first break. And we are back. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this. I know the people listening live love that little break. So, what are your standout players? Because I have some thoughts after kind of looking at some of the individual performances from the lines. What are some of your thoughts? The one thing I do want to say is that before we do this, I think the numbers got skewed a little bit by that third period when the game was kind of out of hand and already decided.
Yep.
Actually, so let's go here. What are your thoughts on Nick Ritchie from this game? And what do you think of the penalty that he took at the end of the game? Seeing as that's something we've really talked about.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'll start with the negative first off. That was not a good penalty. For those of you who kind of know me and who follow my work, you'll know I might be one of the biggest Nick Ritchie stands out there. But recently, especially the beginning of this season, it's becoming increasingly hard to justify his penalties because it becomes a question now of does the positive value that he contribute on the ice with his play driving outweigh the negatives of his penalties and his discipline issues? And that's a tough question. And that's something that we're going to need a little bit more investigation into. Now, that being said, this game, you take away his penalty, and I know it's kind of dumb to take away the penalty. You have to consider it. We have criticized him for it. But if you take away that penalty and you look at just his production, Nick Ritchie had a phenomenal
Mm-hmm.
game. 5-on-5 score and venue adjusted numbers here. He had over 71% of the shot attempts with him on the ice. He was on the ice for 1 goal for and no goals against. That Getzlaf goal wasn't on the ice for any other goals, and that was 6 goals against. We're looking at, well, that was at 5-on-5, so a little bit less than that. He led the team in expected goals for at 5-on-5, and he was third in expected goals allowed in terms of least amount, highest on the team in expected goals for percentage.
And
He had a monster night at 5-on-5.
I want to backtrack real quick. I know we've mentioned expected goals a bunch on this podcast, and we've kind of explained it, but for anyone listening for the first time, expected goals are basically a measurement of quality of shot. Essentially, different websites will apply or create a model where shot location and pre-shot events will affect the expected percentage of a goal based on that shot. So what's the percentage of that shot going in? So if a shot, for instance, the easy one to look at is Troy Terry. Troy Terry, he led the Ducks in all situations. In terms of individual expected goals, so how many expected goals he created with 0.82. And so that's largely due to the fact of his penalty shot, because at 5-on-5, he was at 0.07. So his penalty shot goal has about an 80% chance, basically, of going in the net per an expected goal model. So that adds about a 0.8 expected goal total to the Ducks. So that's a pretty clear example of, it's basically trying to measure based upon the quality, eliminating the quality of the shooter, eliminating the quality of the goaltender, and just purely looking at where the shots are coming from, what the expected goals should be in this game. And it's a way you can evaluate players. You can use it to evaluate how the team played, if they should have been better, or should have had a better outcome. And maybe we can look at the Ducks tonight, both from a goal scoring and a goal prevention perspective. You can also look at it and maybe try to, as time goes and you build up a large enough sample size, maybe you can make some judgments saying, well, maybe this guy is just a below average shooter, and that is why his individual expected goal totals are greater than what his actual goal totals are over this large sample. And so we have enough. Same thing with goaltenders. That's how you look at goals saved above expected, like looking at how John Gibson, he performed this much above what was expected of him tonight. So also, I want to give a shout out to the broadcast crew for mentioning natural stat trick. Very positive.
I was surprised.
Yeah, very. So the other line that I wanted to mention is, you mentioned Ritchie, but the Ritchie Getzlaf Kasha line had a lot of good chances. 14 shot attempts for, only 6 against. On the ice for the only goal for and no goals against. Generating more expected goals than against. The Delorier Grant Rowney line continues to get shelled when they're on ice. It's becoming more and more of a problem. I'm all for, and I'm very much for rolling 4 lines. I think it keeps guys fresher later in games and makes the team, or puts the team in a better situation for that. But that line they're struggling. They're really struggling. I know a lot of people want to highlight them as being a big positive because Grant's winning faceoffs, but anytime they're on the ice, the other team's generating offense, and it's starting to become a concern.
Yep. It's outside of really, I think, the season opener, when they legitimately did have a good game and ended up with the most time on ice of any of the 4 lines. They have been pretty much hemmed in the entire time. And here's the thing. For a 4th line, even if you are rolling 4th lines, and even if you are going to be like Dallas Eakins and you're going to blend kind of blur the line between the designation of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th line, it is a low bar for 4th line. You're not going to expect them to control 55, 60% of the shot attempts every night. You're not expecting them to have this great expected goals for. But you would expect them to maybe be, I would say, in terms of shot attempts and expected goals, I think a good bar for that would be somewhere kind of in the mid-40s, I think is a realistic expectation, what you would expect from an average 4th line. These guys are down in the 20s and 30s every single night. They are bleeding shots against, they are bleeding chances, even against other teams' fourth lines. So this is definitely something that's going to need to be looked at
Yep.
sooner rather than later.
Yep. And I thought Manson overall at 5-on-5, I mean 56% Corsi for percentage. But this is where the issue comes in. 35.21 expected goals for percentage. He had a rough game. I mean, he gave up a couple really glorious chances against that ended up in the back of the net. So, I think
I also want to point out just really quick, just one more point out that you may have already harped on to earlier this season, but you mentioned that a lot of people are liking Grant because of the fact that he wins a lot of faceoffs, and he is. And if you don't know, and I hate that the fact that the broadcast just pounds us into the dirt. Faceoffs are one of the more overrated traditional stats that you will find. Faceoffs has found there have been a bunch of studies on them. Faceoffs have found extremely weak correlation to goal scoring and actual possession and higher shot attempt percentage. You would think now they can matter in certain situations. They become a lot more important with things like special teams, power plays, penalty kills, things like that. But at 5-on-5, face-offs are just extremely, extremely overrated. So if you see somebody saying Grant is great because he wins a lot of face-offs, maybe take that with a grain of salt.
The reason why I'm laughing is I think that we should just dub ourselves the face-off pod. Felix and I swear have talked about face-offs and their importance and all that. Basically exactly what you said at least 2 or 3 times this season already.
Well, there you go. I added to it. I had to jump in.
Yeah, that was why I was chuckling. So, any other big picture thoughts on the game?
I think you pretty much nailed everything.
I mean, all I've got is Ducks fans out there, don't get too down on this game. There's actually a lot. This is a game where there's a lot of positives to be taken away. And I think, yes, the scoreline sucks. Yes, it's never fun, but this was not a game as bad as the scoreline projected, and it's a game that over the course of an 82-game season, there's going to be these games. There's going to be these games where it's just nothing goes right in terms of the puck going in the net, and everything goes wrong in terms of the puck going in your own net. And I think the positive was the Ducks didn't let that, at least until the third period, but it was out of hand at that point, and even then it was still fairly even. They still were generating a fair amount of shots in that first and second period. And I think that that's a big positive, is that they weren't letting that kind of get them down and sitting back in their own zone. I mean, at 6-1, 5-1, it's kind of easy to let that happen, but they were constantly pushing at least up until that point when it was 5-1, 6-1. So there's a lot of positives. As Joshua's data in the Twitch chat says, hashtag it's a process. So before we jump into the second break, I want to mention the Ducks have signed Luca Sbisa. This is not 2010 or 2011 for those of you listening to this. The Ducks in 2019 have signed Luca Sbisa to a 1-year contract. I believe they're reporting it's one way, which I do want to
Told you, called it.
Yeah, I want to mention for those of you out there, one way does not mean does not actually have to do anything with waiver eligibility. Waiver eligibility has to do with games played and amount of service in the NHL. So whether this was a 2-way or 1-way, NJ Devils fan is claiming it's a 2-way. So maybe
it's a 1-way. No, it was confirmed by Eric Stevens that it was a 1-way deal.
Let me check on that for you.
Double check on that, but I'm pretty positive.
Okay. Basically, just kind of following up on what I was saying though. 1-way versus 2-way, it doesn't have anything to do with waivers. He would still need waivers regardless. What the difference is a 1-way deal means he gets that amount of money in the AHL or the NHL. Doesn't matter where he's playing. He gets that salary. If it's a 2-way deal, he'll have a salary in the NHL, a salary in the AHL. A lot of times they'll also have a guaranteed amount. So basically, he could be making $1 million in the NHL and making $200K, $300K in the AHL, but have a guaranteed amount of $500,000, $600,000. So it's usually when he's up in the NHL, he's making that $1 million rate divided by however many games. And when he's in the AHL, he's making that other one. And so he could potentially make more than the whatever the guaranteed amount is. But if he's in the AHL the whole season, he's going to get that amount. So that's all that means. What are your thoughts on it, CJ?
So as Eric Stevens reported earlier today, number one, he did report that it is expected to be a one-way deal.
Has Cap
So
Friendly reported anything on it besides
we
just
have
announcing it?
Cap Friendly hasn't actually reported anything. They've got the Ducks logo next to it, but they have nothing about the contract details. They may have to wait until he clears waivers. Um, However, the it's the expectation, according to Eric Stevens of the Athletic, is that he is going to hopefully clear waivers, and he should. Let's be real here, and go down to San Diego. And if he stays in San Diego and does not sniff any time at all in Anaheim for any reason other than injuries, right? I'm totally fine with this signing, and I think he could actually be a decent asset. San Diego's gotten off to a rough start, and just maybe hoping to inspire some confidence with an NHL vet in the kids there, maybe provide a little bit of stability on the blue line. As long as he stays in San Diego, I'm perfectly fine with this signing.
Yeah, and just so you know, Cap Friendly is listing him as an NHL non-roster. So they put him on waivers. If he clears, they'll send him to the goals. I mean, the goals right now, I believe, are 0-4. So I think this is probably just a move made to try to shore up their defense. I mean, he's another left-handed shot defenseman. I don't know if he can play the right-hand side. So I don't know if it would make a whole lot of sense with kind of the logjam on that left-hand side that the Ducks currently have with Cam Fowler potentially playing the left-hand side or Brendan Gooley. You've got Hampus Lindholm. You've got Jacob Larson. I mean, Michael Del Zotto is also a left-handed shot that is playing the right-hand side. So it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me that he's the guy that's brought in because, I mean, there are probably Ducks fans out there that might have some fond memories of Luca. Not sure how many, but
what memories are those?
It's funny because when I saw it, it kind of made me backtrack a bit in my memory bank. When they traded for Sbisa, that was like the year before. I think it was the draft before they drafted Cam Fowler. And once Fowler was drafted, both him and Sbisa really broke into the NHL together. And it's funny because at that point in time, they were supposed to be like the next faces of the franchise. They were supposed to be the blue line group moving forward. And it's just funny how things can change so quick. And it's also crazy that he's only 29. It seems like he should be so much older.
I thought he was like 34 years old. I was actually shocked. But it's also important to remember too that at one time, like he was in the Pronger trade. Like at that time, Sbisa was one of the top defensive prospects in the Flyers system and one of the better ones in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean he was he
but so was Michael Del Zotto.
He went straight to the NHL at 18 years old, and then actually played a little bit for the Ducks as 19. Then they sent him back down to junior. Also crazy that Michael Del Zotto is only 29. I keep thinking he's older than that. So having said that, we're gonna jump into our second break here. Then we're gonna start getting into your questions. So we will be right back after this. And we are back. So, time for the spiel, people. So, for those of you watching the recorded version of this on YouTube, yes, we do post the video on YouTube every single time. You can search for us by searching for AC Pod. If you want to like and subscribe to the video, it would be very, very helpful. It really helps us kind of work our way up on YouTube. And for any of you out there that like using YouTube to listen to it, it's really helpful. And if you want to comment on that video, I will make sure to reply, as Mark Bertrand usually comments on all our videos, and I'll either make sure to, if he has questions, try to read them on the show, or just try to answer in the YouTube comments. So if you want to do that, you can hit the subscribe button. CJ, point down to where that subscribe button is. There you go. Point there. There you go. All right. And then also...
No, it's up in the...
No. YouTube's down.
YouTube down.
YouTube's down.
Hi, YouTube.
YouTube's down. And then we also have the recorded version of this, but we do a live show at twitch.tv/acpod each and every time, where you can interact with us in the Twitch chat. You can also help support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you have Twitch Prime. And with Twitch Prime, you can support and subscribe to the show, just like Ken Pafu just did for 8 months. And I believe I'm trying to find it, but we also had one more person, betting 55555, subscribed with Twitch Prime also earlier tonight. So thank you so much to both of you for subscribing to the show. Oh, 9 months. Sorry, I read that wrong. It's almost midnight, Tony. just accept it. But if you want to help support the show, you can subscribe to the channel by hitting that subscribe button. Supposedly, you can do it now on the iOS app by clicking on CJ's face. That's around where the subscribe button pops up. Or if you're on your desktop, you can hit the subscribe button and CJ, point up to that subscribe button. There we go. And so with that, you get special emotes in the chat, special badges next to your name. And if we have a very crazy night, we will prioritize your questions above other non-subs. But tonight, we will be trying to get to all of them. So here we go. Lewis had a question earlier on that I wanted to hit on. What does the stat PDO, or what does PDO, the PDO stat mean? You want to take this or want me to?
Yeah, no. So PDO, and it was kind of answered in the chat, but PDO is it's very commonly referred to as a measure of luck. That's not entirely accurate, but what it does tell you is it does tell you whether or not certain aspects of a team's play are sustainable, maybe if they are running into a bit of hard times, things like that. So basically, PDO is an extremely simple measure. You literally just combine the team's shooting percentage and the save percentage. So you combine those two, and for most teams, the average in the NHL, that's going to average out to around 100. If you're, and usually you can have a little bit. So if you're at I think the Ducks are at like a 1026 PDO, so 1026, that's pretty average. That's pretty normal. But sometimes for really good teams or really hot teams or something like that, you'll see, I think the Islanders were a really good example of this last year, where they ran something like close to an 1100 PDO because they were getting ridiculous save percentages. That just showed that, hey, their goaltending was really hot and that they may have been kind of running on a little bit of good fortune. Whereas if a team may be sitting around at 950, 940, 920, something like that, you can kind of look at those individual components and say, it looks like maybe their shots aren't going in right now from the shooting percentage. Maybe their goalie is having a rough stretch of games. So it's a good kind of broad metric. It doesn't get very specific, but it is a good broad metrics to get a feel for how a team maybe should be playing.
I think it's a good first look. I actually don't really look at PDO that often, to be honest. I mainly look at save percentage, the two components of it, save percentage and shooting percentage, more so because I think that for me that's the more interesting part to look at. Because I think with PDO, what you need to look at is look at the shooting talent on the team. Is that factoring into it? And maybe the Ducks might be a little low on shooting talent, but they're also getting high save percentage. Part of that high save percentage, and they actually have a pretty high PDO last time I looked. I don't look at it that often, but I did because I was curious. And a lot of that is due to John Gibson. And part of that you can look at and say, well, okay, that's kind of to be expected. And I know some people will look at PDO and say, well, why are they just combining two random numbers? The main reason why is you're kind of looking at the save percentage on both sides of the ice, essentially. And it's been found through kind of some statistical research and regression and different things like that, that most teams will end up regressing to 1.0. There are some outliers there, both from a quote-unquote luck perspective, and part of it is also due to skill in terms of having this the skilled shooting. So it's a good first look to try to do a deeper dive onto something and try to figure something out. So I don't know if it's something that I would say, all right, this team's bad because they have a high PDO. This team's good because they have a low PDO. It's something where maybe you can look at it and say, all right, they may see a bump up, but what's causing them to have this? And so it's a good starting point.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point there, and something that a lot of people don't really realize is that it literally is measuring save percentage at both sides of the ice, because shooting percentage is literally just the inverse of save percentage for the other goalie, for the other goalies that the team plays.
Yep. All right. So Hardcore Luchador has two questions for us. So let's hit them. His first question is, I believe that faceoffs are skewed as a non-issue / overrated stat because it takes into account all teams rather than possession teams. I find them more critical against possession teams. You both play. What are your thoughts? I don't really think that if you're playing a possession team or not a possession team, that really matters. The main reason why is because at the end of the day, I mean, I've said this a bunch of times with faceoffs, is that they're just a puck battle. And there's a lot of puck battles throughout the ice. And the teams that are good, quote unquote, possession teams at possessing the puck, getting lots of shots, all that different type of stuff, what they're good at is not only generating the shots, but when they get the puck, it's hard to get the puck off of them. And that's because they're constantly winning those puck battles. So they're good at possession, not because they're good at face-offs. They're good at being good at face-offs for that type of team is almost a result at being good at the puck battles. And so the face-offs are just a small component. And so I think when we look at face-offs, and we've obviously talked about this at length on different pods now, but it's just one component. And it's not that they don't matter. It's just they're very overblown from the general hockey media perspective. And a lot of that is due to the fact of them being an easily recognizable stat. It's easy to count. All right, here's a face-off. All right, face-off one, face-off one, face-off one. It's much harder to determine, all right, here was a puck battle. All right, which team won that? All right, here's a battle on the boards. Whereas, so if you added all of those up into a grand sum, I think that could be interesting. I think that there would be some correlation with a team being good. But all you're seeing with a face-off is, I mean, it's funny because this is one of the things that some people criticize the public data on, is that you're only having a light switch turned on every once in a while in terms of the shots, but that's still better than anything else. But I'm going to use that analogy here, is that when you're looking at face-offs, you're essentially turning the light on every couple minutes only. And so you're only getting that information at that point in time, and you're missing all of the other puck battles that are happening.
Yeah, keep in mind that when you look at face-offs, it's extremely important that you frame it in the context of what Jake said, that it is a puck battle, because realistically, that's what it is. But it's a numbers game. There are way more 50-50 puck battles naturally occurring over the course of the game in regular play than there are face-offs in any game. And that's just a fact. That's just the way hockey works. That's just the way the NHL works. So if nothing else, it's just a sheer numbers game. That why put so much emphasis on these, kind of defined puck battles is what they are, when you essentially have the same thing, other 50-50 puck battles happening way many more times through the course of play over the course of a game.
I'm pretty sure I won a lot of my faceoffs tonight, and I didn't score a goal. I wasn't on the ice for a goal, so
yeah. See, that faceoffs don't matter.
Yeah.
That just means Jake's a good faceoff man, but he can't score with crap.
Off one of my faceoff wins, there was a point shot and I tipped it, went through the goalie's 5-hole, just didn't come out the other end.
Sample size, Jake, just one time. Just come on, man.
All right, so Hardcore Lucha all said, question, Michael Lozado looked terrible to me tonight. Do the metrics show that as well? So real quick, Michael Lozado, really good from a shot metric perspective, 19 shot attempts for, 9 against. In terms of expected goals, though, not as good. Sitting at 31%, 0.35 expected goals for when he was on the ice, 0.78, so really high total against. The one thing I will mention with that, though, is the third period really skewed things, and you can't really break out the data, at least on Natural Stat Trick. You can't.
Well,
really
you can score and venue adjust it, but
No,
even if you scored,
you can't adjust it. You can't break out only the first and second period.
Oh, yeah.
At least in terms of individual data. So here we go. NJ Devils fan, who I believe is a very big goals fan. So shout out to them. I hope you're following Defend the Nest, by the way. Our good friend John Broadbent, that's his account, really does a great job covering them. Also writes our articles for the goals on our website. Said, question, when / if Lucic makes the goals, is he there? Wait.
Sbisa. Luca,
Sbisa. Sorry. Yep,
yeah.
Luca. I was very confused at first when I read that. So that makes more sense. When / if Luca Sbisa makes the goals, is he there to tough them up? Because when he was at the game versus Bakersfield, they were very afraid to make a hit and take a hit.
I think that's a very realistic scenario here. The Ducks not only graduated a bunch of great skilled players like Max Jones, Troy Terry, Sam Steele, they also lost a lot of those big hitting muscle guys. Things like Scott Sabarin, Jacob Megna,
Yeah,
Max Jones, obviously. they lost Walensky. Like these big guys who weren't afraid to hit and weren't afraid to be physical.
Mm-hmm.
And while I generally think a lot of the traditional view of hitting and physical play tends to be very overrated in the game. There is a place for it in certain instances, and there is a certain point where you can't be there as a team getting pushed around by other teams if you have a bunch of small guys. The Ducks have a lot of these small guys who have some skill and stuff like that, but they could easily be bullied around if they don't necessarily have somebody protect them, specifically at a developmental level like the AHL. It's
Yeah.
a bit of a different ballgame in the NHL, but in the AHL, this is going to matter a bit more where you have guys who aren't necessarily good enough to make the NHL filling out these AHL rosters. A lot of these guys tend to be bruisers. So, given that Sbisa has a history of taking a lot of penalty minutes, playing a hard game, he's not particularly a fighter, but he will drop the gloves if need be. I could totally see this being one of those physical type of signings as one of the main reasons why Murray brought him back.
Yep. All right. So let's end with this question right here from at Kempafu, Tony, our good buddy, the one and only Silverberg lover. From our Twitch chat and the Anaheim Calling Patreon Discord. So, question: if the Getzlaf and Terry lines don't regress to normal, are we in danger of becoming a top-heavy / one-line team in regards to Raquel, Henrique, Silverberg? I know that Henrique and Silverberg are shooting above normal shooting percentage, but even if they regress, they could still be the only line scoring consistently. If this is a worry, what would be a way to fix that? So I've been actually kind of mulling over this, and I know I mentioned this a little bit here. If the Ducks do end up being a one-line team, like in terms of goals and everything like that, because I think the plan is that, and I think in reality, I'm not that actually concerned to answer the question if this is a worry, what would be a way to fix that? I'm actually not that worried about it. I think that all the lines are creating chances. I think that Nick Ritchie, if he's creating these types of chances, Andre Kasha they're going to find the back of the net. It's only a matter of time. But if it stays this way where they're just not finishing the chances, I'm really inclined to swap Henrique and Getzlaf simply because then you're giving Getzlaf elite shooting talent. And I think that may be the only negative with the current setup, and maybe what you could look at with Ritchie and Kasha is they're getting these glorious chances partially because they're playing with Getzlaf and they're not finishing them. And maybe that's a concern that they don't have the finishing talent. And so maybe you want to swap Henrique and Getzlaf. Now, granted, then you end up with Henrique also kind of getting hit negatively by moving away from Raquel and Silverberg. But I will say this about Henrique. He's actually had success with Ritchie and Kasha, and part of that is he's a trigger man. And so the entire concept of that line of Ritchie and Kasha becomes much different when you have Henrique there as compared to Getzlaf. It's not so much Henrique setting them up, it's more so Kasha kind of becoming the playmaker, and so it gives them more of a finisher on that line with Henrique, whereas Getzlaf kind of pops in and is just going to be finding Raquel and Silverberg. And I think I'd like to see Terry and Steele stay together. I think that even if they're not finishing, allow them to build chemistry, because maybe those are two guys that are going to be playing together for a long time moving forward. So you want to see them build that chemistry. So Tony actually said Ritchie's shooting at 10%, Getzlaf at 11.8. Those numbers seem higher than I expected for some reason. Has
Ritchie's I think is actually kind of normal. He's around the 9 to 10. He's actually pretty average as far as shooting goes. Getsy's actually a little high. Getsy's always had a little bit of a lower shooting percentage. He doesn't shoot a whole lot, but at last I checked, but that's a little bit high for him.
Is that so far this season, Tony? I mean, here I've got the Ducks stats open. Give me one sec. I'll find it. So you've got so far this season, Getzlaf shooting 11.8, Ritchie at 10. So yeah, that's right. But the thing is, Kasha's only shooting 4.8.
Yeah.
I actually had forgotten that Ritchie had scored a goal. So there's that. So he has 1 goal on 10 shots on goal. So there's your 10%. Getzlaf at 11.8. So I could see that being sustained. But I think if you look at the quality of their chances, that's kind of more so what I'm talking about there. So, and especially Kasha at that 4.8, I don't really see that staying the way it is. I don't see Terry staying at 6%. I see that coming up. So I really...
By the way, I was wrong on Getzlaf. By the way, Getzlaf is right about at a career average. He shoots at an 11.6 career shooting percentage,
Yep.
so he's right at about average.
It's mainly he just doesn't shoot the puck enough to get the
Yeah.
goals with that high percentage. I mean, he's a good shooter, and he's able to find the back of the net. So
I mean, we saw that tonight.
yeah. So yeah. I think. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Are you worried about the lineup, and how would you? Do you have any suggestions for how to fix the lineup if that is a concern?
No, I think you nailed it. I've been encouraged with the play overall. And I think the bottom line is this, and I know you and Felix have talked about it, but it's really important, especially when it comes to games like this, to temper your expectations, because this is a team that is still in the middle of a retool, not a full-blown rebuild, but a full-blown retool, and they're not expected to be true, like, deep playoff Stanley Cup contenders. What matters again is the process, and how are they creating chances? Are they fast? Are they finding each other? Are they getting? Are the kids looking good? Are the kids generating chances? Things like that, long run this season, are going to be more important than the actual results on the ice, given the setup of the team this year. And I know that kind of sucks, because you want them, we all want them to win all their games, and we all want them to, make a run at the Stanley Cup. And if things break the right way, that's certainly possible. But just having the real expectations will lend you a little bit more of a critical eye to the game. So as of right now, no, I'm not really worried, as long as they're generating these chances. And I think that you had a great suggestion of swapping Henrique and Getzlaf. That's a relatively easy and minor change to, hopefully boost the shooting and finishing a little bit.
Yep. All right. So I think that's going to do it, because it is currently 12-17. And both of us played in a beer league game and had to watch this Ducks game. So, for those of you out there, you can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Reindeer Games 91. You can find CJ at CJ Woodling. You can also find him running the Twitter account at Anaheim Calling. Once again, he is the managing editor of Anaheim Calling, so content being pumped out at AnaheimCalling.com is most of the time his idea. My weekly rankings should be back at some point in time. I'll write them at some point. It's been a crazy week for me. I'll get them to you, and then I will be more consistent after that. But so for those of you out there that want to support the show, obviously, we've already mentioned subscribing, liking the show on YouTube. You can help us out on Twitch. You can also help or support us on Patreon. So we have a Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/acpod. And with that, you can support us at either the $1 tier, which is where you just get access to the Discord chat, which is a good time. The $5 tier is the real big one, where you get 2 bonus episodes a month. And it's Felix and I really doing a deep dive on the Ducks, on the NHL, on whatever you really want. We also do a lot of random type stuff. I have an idea for the next episode, and I'm going to try to use it, which is basically where I explain to Felix wrestling storylines, both ones that I've made up and real ones, and see if you can tell the difference. It's going to be real fun. And it's also going to be informative for those of you out there that don't watch wrestling. So enjoy. But this October, this current month we're in, we're doing a big drive, a big thing to try to push ahead this Patreon website. So if we hit $350 a month in the month of October, we will be hosting a Patreon exclusive watch party, and all the patrons in October will be invited. So if you want to just help support the show for this 1 month and then jump back off, that's fine. You'll still be able to come to the watch party. If we don't hit in October and we eventually hit it, it's just going to be all patrons at that time. So there's the benefit of supporting us right now and really pushing us up to that 350. 500, we'll host a live Patreon exclusive show. At 750, we're adding another bonus episode. So we will give you 3 bonus episodes a month as compared to 2. At 1,000, we will host a watch party with a live post-game show following that. At 1,500, we'll add another bonus episode. So 4 bonus episodes a month. And the final way you can support us in a way that's completely free to you is by leaving us an Apple Podcast review. And by doing that, whether it's a rating or a review, it really helps the show out. And one thing that we've started being able to track is where we rank in terms of hockey podcasts within the U.S. And part of that's driven by listens. Part of that is driven by the ratings and reviews. And we are very high up, much higher than I expected. So thank you, everyone out there. But we are currently sitting at, let me see, I believe it's 122 Apple Podcast ratings and reviews. So thank you so much to everyone out there. There's not a new review to read, but if you want to leave us a review, we will read it on the show. We've read a rap. We've read a haiku. We will read whatever you say. So we really appreciate the kind words, and it really does mean a lot.
Just be nice. We're fragile.
Yeah, it really means a lot that 122 of you have gone out of your way to do that for us. And same thing with all of our patrons and our Twitch subs. So I think that's going to do it. Anything else you want to plug?
Nope, I think that's it.
Normal for the show. I should say, Felix is doing a lot of good work writing at the fourth period, so go check out his articles. So I think that's going to do it for tonight. So have a good one, everyone. We'll talk to you on Thursday, which is now a day away, basically. So have a good one.